Welcome back. As we enter the final stretch, we focus on the building blocks of strategic autonomy, critical raw materials, without which neither the green transition nor digital leadership is possible. In this session, we welcome Doncho Barbalov, Deputy Minister of Economy and Industry, working to strengthen the investment climate, innovation uptake, and Europe-aligned economic security, and Professor Svetoslav Georgiev, Director of the Geological Institute at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, bringing scientific depth on resources, value chains, and strategic autonomy. To facilitate the discussion, please welcome Paul Lambert, Ambassador of Belgium to Bulgaria.
Very good afternoon. The average laptop or computer contains very little critical raw materials. It's just the battery, cables, hard disk, solid state disk, and probably the motherboard. If it's one, it's not important. If it's 10, hundreds of thousands, then it's getting interesting. That's what happened. Windows 10 support is ended. Windows 11 came. We had thousands and thousands of laptops to be changed within the federal government. And then we are happy to have a company called Umicore who is able to actually recite it and extract the various, even gold, from those computers. And so I'm very happy this brings me to the very first question on national inventory, national capacity. Dear Minister, Bulgaria, just like much of Europe, is believed to possess significant reserves of critical raw materials. But then there is a difference between potential and strategic assets. So the question to you would be, what is your government, the Bulgarians' top priority to bridge the gap? Is it accelerating exploration, the investment framework, or fast-tracking permitting? Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, I want to congratulate the organizers for raising this important topic today and for bringing us all together. And in preparation of this meeting, I was looking into what critical materials are used in what kind of products, and if I can take your example of a computer, so we have to remove the screen, remove the hard disk, remove the memory, and maybe the end we're only going to have an empty box. So practically all products in modern society include critical raw materials, and that's why they're so important. And they're not only important for us in Bulgaria, they're important for the whole world, and as we can see, they're part of economic security, technological sovereignty, and democratic resilience. And now they're more and more used as economic weapon between countries. And that's why it's very important what happened last year in 2024. European Union adopted a law on critical raw materials. And it focuses on three important areas. One is diversification as a security goal. This is very important because later in the discussion we will see that more than 90% of some critical materials and more than 17 others are imported to European Union. And this critical issue, diversification. The second one is building strategic partnerships. It's also very important because only through partnerships we can secure continued supply of critical raw materials. And of course, third but not least, this is the development of domestic capacity in Europe. This is also very important, and there are some very clear strategic objectives which are set through this law. One is by 2030 to have in mining 10%, in processing 40% of the critical raw materials produced in Europe. And by 2030, the goal is to have 65%, and actually not more than 65% of EU supply of any critical raw material to come outside of EU. So at least 35 should be domestically produced, which is a very ambitious and important goal. And based on this law, actually EU is changing in the last years. It's much more organized, much more speedy. And already there are 47 projects which are approved and are going to be funded as priority projects. And it's very interesting to see how they are split among types of projects. We have 25 in extracting activities, 24 in processing, 10 in recycling. Recycling is very important as a potential area for reusing raw materials. And the substitution of raw materials, 2 projects. If you look at the map, it's very interesting to see in neighboring countries. We have 3 projects in Romania, and in mining, copper, graphite, magnesium. In Greece, there are 2 projects which are for aluminium extraction and processing. And in Serbia, we know they have lithium, so they have 1 project. Unfortunately, in this group of initial projects, we don't have a project from Bulgaria, but I hope and I expect that in the next years, we're going to be able to develop and apply for some projects and get funding, of course, which is very important for us.
Very well. Professor, turning to you as a scientist now, from a scientific point of view, what would be the most important bottleneck to have all those resources but make them a bankable and usable national resource?
Well, first, thank you for the invitation to the organizers. Second, I start with a disclaimer, 2 of them. They each stem from the fact that I'm a scientist. First, I'm going to show you a graph to back my claims with data. If the colleagues can put on the graph, we can discuss it a little bit. And second, that I'll be probably overly critical, but criticism is the way for progress, both in science and in life, actually. So this map that I show you, don't look into the details too much, but it shows 2 things. The current state of global shares of mining of critical raw materials on the top, and the bottom graph shows the current shares of processing of critical raw materials. And this is something that I compiled in the last few days. The data is current. What you can see, many things on the diagram, but first, we've heard several times today that China is dominating. Yes, China is the orange color on the map, and it does dominate. But actually, this is the optimistic version of the map, because China, except from mining its own resources, in orange here, it also invests heavily abroad. So a significant portion of the green, which is Africa, and almost the entirety of the yellow, which is the rest of Asia, is also owned by Chinese companies. So the dominance of China in mining is almost complete, and same for the processing. We notice that China processes 100% of the heavy rare earths and most of the light rare earths and many other elements. So we have an issue. How do we fix this issue? The European Critical Material Act outlined those ambitious goals. First, this is a good governance measure, but second, this is a very late governance measure. This is comes like you're in deep water and you suddenly realize, okay, we unlearned how to swim in the last 40 years. Because the fact is that in the last 40 years, Europe and the Western world shy away from mining activities, and as a result, we don't have access to the resources we need. The way forward is to accelerate mining and to accelerate processing, recycling as well. But this is a governance problem, to answer directly your question. It's not truly a scientific problem. I think we need 4 kind of key steps to solve the problem. First is the political will. This is check, okay, it exists. Second is the capacity and the talent. Yes, Europe has the capacity, has the talent. Third, the ability to act. And here is a little bit more, we enter in murky waters. Yes, there are some acts, but they're not very great considering the goals and the timeline. And geology is a slow business. It takes on average 8 years from after you start to search for a deposit to when you find it. And then it takes many more years to build the mine and then get the profit. And the last is financing. And we don't have the adequate financing for this. Yes, we say they're critical, but if we compare to other critical industries, like we say defense is critical, and then every country allocates a certain portion of its budget to defense. You don't rely on European Horizon project for defense. You know, you cannot defend by this. We need specific dedicated funding for quickly developing the projects that we know they exist, the deposits.
Thank you, Professor. That brings us neatly to the second question to both of you on economic strategy, the whole idea of the value chain. So competition is just not, it's not just extraction, but it's who controls, and you gave an answer to this one, the entire value chain. So you have processing and manufacturing. So the first, again, I would say to Minister, Bulgaria, where's the strategic ambition? Are we talking about short-term gains, exporting just the raw materials, or are we moving up the value chain with middle, long-term developing capacities in the country to capture more value?
No, basically, actually, your question contains its answer. We have to move up the value chain, not only to focus on extraction. And that's why in my introductory words, I was saying that it's very important to create long-term relationship, because traditionally in mining, return is not huge and payback periods are very long. And that's why it's important to have public financing, as it's already starting for these priority European projects. And on second place, long-term partnerships, because through long-term partnerships, you can secure that your project is going to be viable financially in the long run. And we have in our countries, through our ministry, a strong support to this long-term projects through developing an industrial strategy. We have to work with our European and US partners to analyze and take stock of the available resources in the country, which is also very important to have a view of what is available. And of course here we can use modern technologies in exploiting the current reserves and current deposits we have. And then of course identifying what is available and try to make it on the market. But of course, going up the value chain is very important, not only to produce and export raw materials, but also to produce the final products which use these critical materials.
Professor, your take on that, on the value chain?
I totally agree. The added value is much higher when you produce, when you use the resources that you gain. And again, we can look for China. We don't have to vilify. China is looking over their natural resources. They've done nothing else, at least in this area. So what they've done, they looked for deposits systematically. They invested in exploration. They invested in mining those deposits. They invested in processing those deposits. And by certain government measures, they kept the use of most of these materials, although they export a lot to the world as the only producer, but they actually produce a lot of materials like magnets for the wind turbines and many, many, many others. So a lot of these deposits, these minerals, they stay and they are exported as a final product with a much higher return rate.
Can I add something? And it's true they export final product, but they are not readily exporting the raw materials themselves now.
Correct.
And they have very strict restrictions on exporting products, and this is one of the major problem we have faced in EU, and that's why as a community we are discussing, negotiating with China for them to simplify the procedures and export some raw materials like these magnets, which if not available, there will be no car production in Europe and some others. And this morning it was discussed about artificial intelligence, and I looked, and practically it's nice to have artificial intelligence, but you need the infrastructure behind it. And there are some critical materials like gallium and germanium, and China is controlling in one case 98% of the global supply, in the other case 60%. So that's why it's important for us, and it's a process which is starting for EU to, of course, negotiate with China to open its export market on these materials, and on the other hand to start production in Europe and other countries like the Chinese did in all over the world, so that we are going to have independent source of these critical materials. There is an expectation that till 2030, some say 4, some others say 6 times the demand for critical raw materials will increase, but frankly speaking, whether it's 4 or 6 times, it's times compared to what we have now in demand. So really we have to respond to this.
This brings us to actually the third and the most important and the most difficult question, the geopolitics. You mentioned long-term partnerships. We are reaching here geopolitical aspects if you look at those charts. So indeed, we mentioned the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act. The whole idea was to reduce the dependency on one single source or single sources. So if you're EU or NATO perspective, it's then fundamental that a country like Bulgaria or Belgium, my own country, would develop their resources for their own gain, for their own national interest, for their own needs, but also contribution to the others, to the partnerships, to the alliance. And so then Again, I would ask you the question, Minister, how do you balance commercial interests, which have a national interest, but also international investors, and keeping those resources that we mentioned in our Western hemispheres, with our partners, with our alliances?
So basically, we have to use modern technology, which is the best technology we can find available to use in order to produce these critical materials with all environmental considerations taking into account. You know that in Bulgaria we have major territories covered in Natura 2000, and of course nature has to be preserved, so we have to use the most modern technology and recycling, and do everything we can to preserve nature, at the same time make these critical materials available for the modern production.
Professor, slightly adapted question, but on the same topic. You, in your research, do you think here the cooperation, there is enough research and cooperation between NATO and EU members so that we can actually control, in the example of China, the value chain from exploration, exploitation, and industrial use? Or are we missing something, and what would be the countries that could lead, the good examples, the best practices that you would have in mind for us?
Those are quite a few questions, but in terms of cooperation, I think we're well set up. We have active cooperations with many European countries, research institutions, and so on, within NATO as well. So that is not an issue. Again, I think the issue is financing and acting, actually, on the subject, because China, as I showed, dominates mining, but it's not, as the previous speakers mentioned, it's not because of their geologic reserves. Okay, they have some, but China is a minor speck, let's say, or a very minor territory compared to the world. There are many more resources. The fact is that we need to develop those resources, and only by talking about developing those resources, we're not going to develop them. In terms of good examples, I don't follow closely everything in Europe, but from my personal experience, I would highlight the Nordic countries, Finland especially, Norway, Denmark with their exploration. They have active geological surveys, active exploration campaigns, they develop projects, they mine, and they don't ruin their environment. And it's a public perception problem, the entire business of raw materials. We think that we're going to destroy the environment. No, this is not the case, or not necessarily the case. We have the power as the European Union, we have the knowledge. We can control the way those minerals are extracted, the impact on the environment, and there are many positive examples within Europe, within Bulgaria, also both for mining and for recycling those mines after their end of lifetime. So the issue is financing and acting. And I just want to say that Bulgaria actually is one of the first countries. Well, first, we're the only country, the European Union, that does not have a geological survey. So we don't have an organization that manages the nature. We don't know our natural resources. We know the mines that exist. We don't know anything else. We cannot look for them because nobody is looking for them. That's the negative side. The positive side is that we are the first European country that established a national scientific program for critical minerals, and this was a little bit in advance of the Critical Raw Materials Act. So there are many research institutions that are working on the problem and partly doing the work of a geological survey, but this program exists.
Actually, very broad subject, but that's why we have to focus on identifying in Bulgaria these potentials for investments. And one of the reasons of not having a Bulgarian project among these first 47 projects is that probably we are not ready yet. But we have to prepare ourselves, we have to study what we have, take stock of existing natural resources, and of course reconsider some of them because technology is developing, and some materials which were not economically viable or technically possible to extract in the past probably now are available on the newer technology. So this is one path. Another path is what the EU is doing It is working with countries across the world and having economic treaties so we can access new markets. And new markets not only to sell European products, but also to invest in these markets. And South America is among these priority areas. Unfortunately, you can guess who is #1 trade partner for the South American countries. It's China. But we are #2, so we have in European Union. So we have a good potential to try to get now to the #1 position again. So this is a second area. So one is domestic, second one is exploring new markets and new possibilities. And the third one, of course, is joining US and working with China so that we can get the materials which they control now and which are important for our industries.
If I may add something, first, specifically for Bulgaria, we know we have large deposits. We have the largest deposit in Europe and one of the largest in the world of manganese. We don't develop it. Or we used to develop it, it's blocked, it stopped for a long time. We have the third largest deposit of tungsten in Europe. Also, we never develop. And there are difficulties both on the administrative side and on the public perception, as I say, side. So we know we have some of those critical mineral resources, but we still don't develop them. And this is an issue. On European side, the situation is not great, I would say, because for the moment, the priority for Europe is to actually categorize what we have. So this is knowledge that has built over the ages, but because of lack of funding of geology in general in the last decades, we kind of lost this knowledge. So now there's a concerted effort of European geological surveys and some Horizon projects do this. The goal is to show on a map what we know that we have. And then for looking for new deposits, again, I said it takes time, it takes money, it takes efforts. So if we are gonna catch up these 40 years of sleep, of delay, we have to act on it.
We have to.
Very well. I'm just wondering if there were any questions from the audience or through the QR.
Indeed, we do. One goes to what was just mentioned, to the abundance of critical materials. Copper was already mentioned as a very strong force, and Bulgaria can rely on. But are there any other materials that could help our country become a more dominant force in the market and help European resilience in doing so?
Yeah, if I can take that. Yes, as I mentioned, we have a large manganese deposit that is known. We have a large tungsten deposit that we know it's there, it's characterized. We have barite, feldspar deposits. These are all critical minerals listed. Fluorides, we have some. Okay, they're not world size, they're not super large, but developing them one by one. And if each country does this, we're going to have enough to change the situation. And for many of the critical minerals, we don't know if we have or not, because we have not looked for them. And if you don't look for them, you don't find them.
And perhaps a follow-up question to the Minister. What are we doing, the institutions are doing to exploit those opportunities?
Yeah, it's a very good question. As part of the industrial strategy we are preparing, we are also now preparing to have an overview of the existing raw materials we know in Bulgaria, study again what we have, exploit available information, but also try to gather new information, because now there are new technologies, new methodology for identifying raw materials, and we have, with help of international partners, find what is in our country, find what is in a state which can be used, I mean, in economic and technical condition, and have a fresh start of a Bulgarian mining industry, and of course work to build the whole value chain up to the final product, not to simply export the material itself. And I think we are well positioned in terms of building the value chain. Of course, we have to start from identifying what is available, try to reduce the period for when it can be actually extracted from the ground, because as my colleague mentioned, it's more than 10 years. And in some countries, it's even 15 plus years. So we have to try to shorten this period in order to be able to go to the market earlier than later. and be as competitive as possible. When the Chinese did it with hard work, we can do the same. So it's just effort and consistent effort with the whole European Union behind us.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, if you allow for a second question, I think we have an interest group or a very interested particular individual who, because we have the same question repeated 3 times, but it goes to the CRMA's monitoring and resilience requirements and your ministry's plans of upholding those with regard to reporting system, introduction of reporting systems and other mechanisms.
This is something, of course, which we are working on, but I mean, I cannot say too much in the moment, but really it's important, of course.
Thank you. This is what we have from the audience for now.
I guess then in the interest of time, and it's late in the afternoon, if I'll try to conclude, if I may, then we touched upon, we started with a little anecdote of our thousands of computers, but it's not just an anecdote, it's really, I mean, a whole, it's a reflection that our government in, you know, how to remake the most of it. So we touched upon geological potential, strategic assets. I was pleased to hear that there is quite some untapped options or paths which have not yet been envisioned or not yet could fulfill. We have to take care into consideration public opinion, though. On the value chain dilemma, it's clearly the drill, baby. We're way beyond this. It's developed. It's moving up the value chain. And then finally, we touch upon all the navigating dependencies, the different alliances, the time to market within EU, NATO, and other like-minded and interested parties. So I would like to see if you have a last comment, and then we'll wrap it up, Mr. Minister.
Well, hopefully soon we are going to be able to report some progress in these efforts, because it's a nice discussion, important topic, and we are all trying to work, and we are all working in order to be able to report to the people that we are achieving some real results. So we are working, but it's a little bit too early to report. It's clearly an important topic, and we will continue with discussions. Thank you.
I would like to again emphasize the importance of this topic for everything in our life, because we as humans, we need resources to build our life, to get energy and so on. So those critical minerals, yes, they're very modern now. I'm happy that there's such an interest in the subject that we're studying day to day for years, but they are part of our life. They are not something from the future. They are everywhere, from our automobiles to our houses, to this screen, to this microphone, and so on and so on. If you need medicine, medical services, they're essential there as well. Defense, essential. Airplanes, essential. So they are everywhere. And for Europe, as a continent, we have to learn again this basic rule that when you build a tower, you have to have the strong foundations. And those are the foundation. Resources are the foundations of every single industry. AI, artificial intelligence, everything, you name it, those minerals are needed. So again, my pledge to start acting on the subject a little bit more seriously and quickly.
It's an important call. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for this wonderful exchange.